as more missionaries or more schools continue to go there, because I know a lot of schools go to that same campus we were at, that these kids may just continue to get support, because it's really hard to see what they go through. So now I'll call up Lex to share some of his experiences.
Okay. Wow. All right. Okay, so my story also happens in the government school. So if you look on the screen, there's a kid with his thumbs up, and that right there is his name is Alexander. Now, I was one of the group of people that after we taught in the government school, one of the ladies asked us if we wanted to stay and help tutor the kids, and so I was like, here's the thing. I get a lot of things from my mother, but the one thing I never got was the ability to teach. So I don't know why I said yes. But I ended up saying yes, and she pulled me to a classroom and pulled out a little boy, and she said, this little boy, Alexander, has dyslexia, so try to be a little patient with him, and let's see if he will do any better. And so I walked Alexander over to the middle of the little corner of the field, and I sat him down, and he brought out his little book, and we started reading together. And I was like, wait, he doesn't have dyslexia, he can read. And so what ended up happening was that I decided to, he read the book in order, and after that again, I was like, all right, Alexander, let's read from back to front. Let's see if you actually know the pages. And I pulled out the same word and pointed to a word and said, this is, you read this word earlier, can you read it again for me? And he like sat there and just looked at me like this, and I was like, Alexander, you just read that word. And he was like, what word is it again? And I was like, oh. And I realized that Alexander only knew how to read the book because he had read it over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, let's see if he can't at least like identify words, then I can teach him. And so I tried to teach him some words, but then again, like Tyler said, some kids don't even know the alphabet, and he didn't know like any of it. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna take me forever. And so for the next hour and a half, I had to reteach him the alphabet, and like sitting there out with him in the grass, and I just slowly taught him, this is A, this is B, this is C. And by the end of the hour and a half, he was able to identify from A to, I think, like Q. And like even that was like was progress. And I literally sat him down after, and after that he was like, he was tired and he didn't want to learn anymore. And I was like, all right, Alexander, let's go have a little bit of fun. And so as I towards the end, I started to just play with him on the playground and talk a little bit with him, and he knew a lot. For his age, he actually knew a bunch of English, and I was very like, he was very friendly, and I was able to play with him and give him a hug and talk to him about the different things I did back home, and I was able to ask him a few questions. And finally at the end, he went back inside the classroom, and then he started to leave with his dad, and I gave him a hug, and I was like, all right, bye Alexander, I'll come see you hopefully sometime soon, and I hope that you remember everything I taught you. And he gave me a hug and a high five, and then he went home. And I went over to talk to the teacher, and I said, hey, I've noticed something, that Alexander, I think he was in the 3rd or 2nd grade, and he's the biggest kid in his class, like compared to his other classmates. Like, how old is he? And come to find out that Alexander is 9 years old. And the teacher told me that Alexander had been in her class for around a year and a half. And before that, he had been in the class below for 3 years, until the teacher was finally tired of him and decided that she wanted to bump him up in next grade. And she said, and the teacher then, who I was talking to, said, I think I'm going to move him up and finally basically get rid of him. And as I looked out the window as he was walking away, I was just thinking to myself, like, wow, like she didn't address the fact that he had dyslexia. And I was like, you know that he needs like special learning? He's like, yeah, but there's not really anything I can do about it. And I was like, wow, like some of these kids like are willing to learn, it's just they don't have anybody to teach them. And also at the end, when she was handing out books to all the kids in her classroom, and the one person that I didn't see get a new book was Alexander. And so I was like, it just made me sad and also touched my heart that a lot of the kids there were struggling, even though it wasn't really their fault. And so my heart goes out to Alexander and even the other kids that are on the screen. So yeah, that's my story.
Hello. So we're gonna go back in time just a little bit to like maybe 2019. One of my older sisters had gone to Belize previously, not exactly with the program Move, but around the same area, I think, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, man, I want to go to Belize. And then a couple of years later, then Heather Torquato went to Belize. I was like, see, everyone close to me is just going to Belize except for me. It's my turn to go to Belize. And then when I started school here in 22, I was like, when mission trips started becoming like more of a mandatory thing, I was like, man, I really hope my senior year we go to Belize. And so senior year comes around and Belize is one of the mission trips. But then at that point in my life, I was not very, I didn't have the financial part for Belize, and at that time in my life, fundraising for Belize and stuff, I didn't really have the capability to really fundraise for it because I was worrying about other stuff like school and coming here. And so I told Miss Crum, I was like, I'm not gonna pay for Belize. I wanna go, but I'm not gonna pay for it. And she's like, don't worry about it. I was like, oh, okay. So I didn't worry about it, and she just told me I was gonna go. But then school things happened, and I was just like, okay, I can't go to Belize because I wasn't doing very well in some of my classes. And so I really wanted to focus on my classes so I could graduate. And so then I was like, no, I really can't go to Belize. And Ms. Crum I had a conversation with Ms. Crum and other mentors, and I didn't really get the best of like, what do you call it? Like response when I told them like as much as I wanted to go, I just couldn't. And I really wrestled with it. And finally I was just like, because then Ms. Crum ended up telling me that it was already paid for, like for me to go. And I was like, oh, okay. So then the more I thought about it, I was just like, okay, I'll go to Belize then. Okay, I'll just go to Belize, because I've been talking about it for years, and here's my opportunity, and this isn't just a regular opportunity that I get to have. And so I got to go to Belize. And so that picture on the right, that was the town trip. Tyler kind of covered it, but that picture covers what happened that day. That day was very chaotic because we had, just about an hour to go into town to find all these different people, like a pastor, a person in the graveyard, and give them gifts or talk to them or give them a glow track. And that particular moment, we had to color in these cards, and Samantha and I and a couple other people were sitting in the back of the truck, and this truck was moving, and we were trying to color nicely in, and so we're like freaking out, we're like, ah, and we're just like, and then we kind of gave up on making it look nice and just color it in so we could give it to people. So that was really chaotic but fun at the same time, and we definitely got sunburnt that day. And the other thing I want to talk about is probably my favorite story to talk about is the snorkeling day. It's not a picture of it up there, but it was covered previously. But basically, the part I want to talk about the snorkeling day was it started off as a fairly good day. Besides the fact that we had missed our boat on the way there to San Pedro Island. But other than that, it was pretty good. On the way back is a completely different story. Because on the way back, I had made it my mission this whole trip that I had to get ice cream in Belize. I just had to. I kind of promised my aunt I would. And so we had like about 15 minutes as we were waiting for the boat back to Belize City. And a little note about the boat is that was the last boat from the San Pedro Island back to Belize City, and they were not going to wait for you. So anyways, the 15-minute period of time, Hadassah, Samantha, and I think Daniel and Julian came with, and Hadassah's dad also came with, and we went in search of ice cream. I didn't tell them we were searching for that, but that's what I was searching for. And about a little ways away from where the boat was from was an ice cream shop, and I went and got ice cream. You know, we ate it all up, good times, got back to the boat launch, and it was like lunchtime, and we were getting ready to eat, and then I don't know why I hadn't eaten yet, but anyways, so then Heather comes up to me, and she's like, Sienna, some of the people want to go get ice cream. I have no idea how they found out about ice cream, but I mean, hey, I would be the same too. And so Heather's like, how far away is this ice cream place? Don't ever ask me how far away something is, because what seems like just around the corner is not just around the corner. It was about a half a mile away, and I'm a fast walker, so that's probably why it just didn't seem like that long, and I was with people, so time just felt short. And so Heather took a group of people, a fairly large group of people, to go get ice cream, and there was only 5 minutes left till the boat was about to leave. And so we were walking, and Heather's like, Sienna, this isn't just around the corner. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess it's a little ways away. It's just up there. It's just up there. It'll be all good. It'll be all good. And so we get to the ice cream shop, and people start ordering. And so then eventually I was just like, I'm going to go back to the boat launch, because I hadn't eaten, like, practically all day. And I didn't drink water all day, so that didn't help. It's blazing hot. I'm hungry. Haven't had food except for ice cream. And it's about a half a mile from the boat launch to the ice cream place and a half a mile back, so that's about a mile in total. So I walked back to the boat launch. I get there, and I see Miss Ames and everyone's getting ready to board. And I was like, and then Megan's dad, Mr. Yu, he's like, Sienna, where is everyone? I was like, they're back at the ice cream shop. And he was like, you need to go get them now because the boat's leaving now. And so I was like, and like they're all just looking at me. So then I ran back to the boat launch, and I was like, or not to the boat launch, the ice cream shop, and I run into the store. I was like, Heather, the boat is like literally about to leave. And like Heather is just as stressed as me. And so then there was like some people leaving the ice cream shop, and so I started yelling to them like, let's go, the boat is leaving now, like it's not gonna wait for us. And I did not want anyone to get stuck on this island. So I ran back with a group, only to realize that half of the group was still at the ice cream shop. So I ran all the way back to the ice cream shop, and I started yelling at people like, let's go, the boat is leaving now. And so then another little part of the group decided to run back, and only to realize that there's still people back at the ice cream shop. So I ran all the way back to the ice cream shop, and it was like the last part of the group, thankfully. And so I ran with the last part of the group, only to realize Heather's still at the ice cream shop because 2 people were still at the ice cream shop. So I ran all the way back, and I was like, where are you guys? Like, the boat is literally leaving. And so we were like running, and low key, I was ready to pull my hair out because, like, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And so thankfully, though, in the midst of all this chaos, a funny thing actually is that the shop owners, they heard me yelling to everyone, like, let's go, the boat is leaving. So they started saying, vamos, andale. It was really funny. And so thankfully, everyone made it onto the boat. And the reason why this is kind of like my favorite story is not just because it's dramatic, because if you know me, I love drama. But I was talking to one of my older sisters, and I was like telling her about it. I was like, wait a second, this is like kind of a good children's story, like if you think about it, because there's like quite a few lessons in it, because it's kind of goes back to like Noah in his day. You know how he was like pleading to everyone to get on the boat, and nobody understood the urgency of it. And that, or there's also people in this life that will mislead you. And like I misled Heather in that group. And so anyways, I think those little like life lessons, I guess, and there's also why that makes it my favorite story. But in general, I also made some really good friends there at Move. There's a student there. I honestly had no idea she was my age. I was like, you're 18? Anyways, she was really, really cool, and I just loved interacting with her, and I made it my goal to be friends with her. Like, yeah, I still stay in contact with her. Anyways, so yeah, it was a really, really good experience. I'm really glad I went, and I hope we were as much of a blessing to them as they were to us. Okay, thank you.
All right. Uh, well, I was the leader on the Arizona mission trip, and I'm sure you all would rather hear from the students, but I just wanted to provide some context for the trip, and I think what I saw as an organizer was at least mildly interesting. And so I thought I would share that first to give you some context. I'll go through all the pictures, and then two of the students will come up and share some perspective on the mission trip that they had, and then I'll just kind of try and flip to the pictures that they wanted to share about that. So we took off from Sacramento and landed in Las Vegas because the tickets were very, very cheap, and we wanted to stop at the Grand Canyon. And so we got some vans, and then immediately realized that we didn't have enough space for the luggage inside the vans. And so we had to rent another truck to come with us. And thankfully, my wife and children came on the trip. And so my wife drove, screaming children and all. And I drove, and Sandra Acosta, she drove with us. So some of you know Sandra because she was here for school before, but she came and joined us on this mission trip. And we drove, and we got out of Las Vegas pretty late because it just took a long time to figure out what was the cheapest solution for our problem. And then we went to Costco and picked up all the supplies because there wasn't really grocery stores nearby. And then we started driving, and our plan was to hit the Grand Canyon just for a short bit, and then head over to the Navajo Nation, where we would do our mission trip. And so we started driving, and I think it became pretty apparent that the soonest we would get to the Grand Canyon was sunset. And so I started thinking, it looks like we're going to get there at 11 p.m. at the soonest to Navajo Nation, which is very late. But we didn't really have any other choice, and so I was thinking, okay, can we do this? Should we be driving through the desert and through the different reservations in the middle of the night? That's probably not a good idea, but I didn't know how bad of an idea that was. And so I was going along, and then I called the pastor, and the pastor, he said, well, I think you should definitely not do that. And he suggested that we stay at Flagstaff Church. And so he called the pastor there, and the pastor said that we could stay there. And then I think it was maybe 20 minutes later, I got a call from Mrs. Nedley. And it was a very random call. She just called me up, and she was like, are you driving through Arizona? I was like, yeah. And she's like, are you driving through Flagstaff? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, well, if you're driving through there, you need to call Laura. And I was like, okay. And I was like, why do I need to call Mrs. Crum? In my head. And I was really confused. Then she's, my daughter-in-law, Laura. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that that Laura and Alan were living there. And so I didn't know why I needed to call her. But so I called her. Actually, I was on the road, and so I hung up. And then the Nedleys are very prompt. And so as soon as I hung up, I think there was maybe 30 seconds between when I hung up, I was still like getting my head wrapped around it. Laura called, and she was like, hey, you need to stay in our house. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, you need to have your family and the girls from the mission trip stay in our house, and we'll feed you supper and breakfast, and then you can be on your way. And I was like, all right, why is that? And she said, well, that road that you guys are planning on driving up to the Grand Canyon and across is is the highest incident road for hitting people stumbling around while they're drunk in the middle of the night. And so, and Alan apparently deals with trauma patients from there all the time. And so they're quite aware of what would happen if we went up there. And so we stopped there at Flagstaff Church and the Nedleys, not these Nedleys, but the other Nedleys, we ate breakfast with them. I should also mention that we stopped at Costco before we knew this was going to happen, and we were shopping for all of our stuff. And one of the meals, it just felt like Costco just didn't have anything for that meal. There was one breakfast that we had planned, and there was just not a single ingredient for that meal there. And we were like, this is so weird. It was like, no matter how much we tried to buy the stuff for that meal, it just like, there was nothing. And so we searched all over, and that's part of why it actually took so long, was because we were searching for this meal. But when we got there, the next morning when we were eating breakfast at the Nedleys, it was that meal. And I think for some reason God had arranged for them to be out of stock of everything so that we didn't purchase it because the Nedleys were providing it for us. And so, you know, the needs we didn't know we had beforehand, God was already providing for on the way. So we took off that morning, and then we took a picture with them, and it was just really nice. It was a refreshing first day, though we were a bit worn from the road and my children not happily riding in the car. And then we went and saw the Grand Canyon. And one of our students took some pictures and edited them, so thank you for that. And yeah, it was just beautiful. We got there kind of in the middle of the day, and then we drove from there to Navajo Nation. This is actually a different canyon, but I didn't realize it until just now. Then we met this pastor, Pastor Silva, and he is not a Navajo guy, but he was a missionary in Africa, but he's now back in the States because he wanted to get his wife out of overwork in a hospital there, and so they're working in Navajo Nation because they just can't help themselves but be missionaries. And so, yeah, they're just working in that area, and his wife's kind of doing the health part, and he's doing 3 churches in the Navajo Nation. And so he met us there, and he kind of settled us in. So we had ordered, I'm just checking to make sure I have all the pictures ready. But we had ordered all the VBS. We were planning on doing a VBS there. We had ordered all the supplies to go to the church. And so in some ways we were very ready, and in other ways we were very not ready for the VBS. But we thought we were unprepared, but we had no idea how unprepared the church was. And it's actually a blessing that we didn't go there the first night, because when I got on the plane, Sandra was coming down from Oregon, and she had talked to a church member there who knew the pastor down here, actually knew this man right here. And they had been talking, and what they found out was that the church was not actually expecting us to come for another month. They had gotten the date wrong on the month. And so we were driving there, and they didn't know we were coming. And so I had talked to the pastor, but the dates had never come up because they had been communicated before I was working with him. And so we were like driving there, and they didn't have enough beds set up in the houses for us, and so they were like desperately setting up beds. And so when I called him and I said, hey, I don't think we'll make it tonight, and he said, oh, well, why don't you just stay in Flagstaff Church? He was more than excited to let us wait one day because he was still busy preparing the place for us. So we got there, and it turned out to be not really a bad thing that we came later, because what we quickly found out about Navajo Nation is that they're a culture based around not time but space. And so it's very difficult for them to think of anything within a certain date period. And so if you give them, hey, we're going to have a VBS between these two dates, it's not, no one will really show up. But if you say, hey, we're going to have a VBS over here in this neighborhood, why don't you come tomorrow night, they'll still show up. They won't say, oh, we have plans or anything, they'll just go. An additional complication that came up was because they are not really time-oriented and more space-oriented, when you ask, how far is this location from here, they will not say 15 minutes or 20 minutes, so you can plan nicely. They will say, oh, it's 2 miles, or oh, it's 50 miles, which does not say anything about the state of the road. So when we were trying to plan, you would ask the locals, hey, there was a guy who wanted to take us to a canyon, and we asked him, how far is it away from here? And he said, oh, it's like, I don't know, it's about 12 miles out. And I said, okay, 12 miles, if we're going at like 40 miles an hour, it could be like 15-minute drive. It was like a 40-minute drive. So we got there, and this guy, he's a native, well, he was a native, he joined the military, and then he came back, and he now lives at the church, and he kind of renovates the church area, but also he's kind of like the caretaker. It's out in the desert, so there's a lot of caretaking to be done. They don't have any trash service in Chinle, and so if you want your trash to go out, you have to drive it 3 hours to go to a reasonably priced dump. You can dump it in town, but you have to like go somewhere and get a permit from one of the other churches, and you have to pay a lot of money, more than 3 hours worth of gas, to dump it in a certain spot in town. And even then it's like by the pound, and so it ends up being quite expensive. So yeah, they're like trying to burn as much as they can, and otherwise you're just throwing it on a trailer and carting it out. And then water was also an issue that I didn't foresee happening, because there wasn't clean water on the campus, and so we had to bring all of our bottled water, and it's in the desert, so we should be drinking a lot of water. And so all of those things were just interesting things, little logistics that I didn't expect, but ended up being a bigger part of our trip, actually. So this guy wanted to take us out to a canyon. He said, hey, it's 12 miles from here. We drove into the state park, and then we drove through it, and it took us almost 40 minutes to get there. But then when we got to the canyon, it was like we drove like basically off-road for a couple miles, and there was like a trail, but I felt like I was gonna tip the van over that they had lent us, and it was exciting. But then we got here, and we got to this canyon, and the guy really wanted to show us these ruins. And here is the ruins. These are the 3 Turkey ruins, and apparently they're people who fled other Native American tribes that were kind of into sacrificing to gods, and so they had built their town in a canyon underneath so that they couldn't be spotted by other tribes that were hunting them. And so the guy shared a little bit about that, and we hung out in the canyon, and then we started VBS. So for the VBSs there, the kids don't come to the VBS, the parents don't drive their kids to the VBS. They take the church vehicle and they go around and pick everybody up. And I was hoping that the pastor would do that, but he also pastors 2 other churches, and so I ended up driving into interesting communities. We handed out a bunch of pamphlets, and then people told us yes or no, but I was still driving kind of to random houses and around, and the pastor also said, yeah, just go into the neighborhood, and if you see any random kids, just pick them up. And I'm driving a white 15-passenger van, and I was a little bit scared, to say the least. Scared that it would come across poorly. And the first kid that jumped into the van said, hey, are you a kidnapper? And I said, no, I'm going to take you to VBS. And he's, oh, okay then. And so we picked up several kids. Some of the kids were kids that went to school there, and some of the kids were just lovely kids from the community. And they would get in the van and they would say, hey, my friend lives in that house over there. Let's go knock on that door. And so the first night, I kind of like, I'd given like, I don't know, I had probably given myself 45 minutes to pick up all the kids. I think by the time I got all the kids to the church, it took an hour and a half because all of them wanted to recruit other kids to go to VBS with them. And this kid was the chief of that. He was very, very excited. He was what I sometimes imagine Pastor Don to be like when he was younger. Very, very excited to bring people to church. But also a handful. So anyways, here's some pictures of the VBS. We did outdoor games, and the kids loved it. And they also wanted to swing, and then we did lessons, and oh yeah. We also didn't have any decorations readily available, and it was hard to bring the supplies in. So we painted, it was an airplane-themed VBS, and so we painted, we actually went up into their attic, found art supplies that hadn't been touched since the previous pastor was there, took the art supplies out, asked the pastor that was there, and then we painted these planes and then hung them up in the church. And yeah, and then the kids really enjoyed it. We went through lessons with them every night and played with them. There's Ladarius again being himself. And yeah, it was a wonderful blessing. I'll let the kids share more about that maybe. And then on one of the other days that we were there, we made some homemade, not homemade, but we ground up some peanuts to make some organic peanut butter, and then we made granola, right? Yeah, granola and peanut butter, right? And we went to the flea market with them, and we gave it out for free. Now, the Navajo people love free stuff. I mean, who doesn't really love free stuff? But the other thing we also gave out for free was Bibles. And interestingly enough, we were out of Bibles before we were out of peanut butter and granola. But people there, so the context there is there's the Mormon church and the Catholic church kind of. To the north of Chinle, it's the Mormon church. To the south of Chinle, it's the Catholic church. And neither church is really excited to bring Bibles to their people in their native language. And so when they see the Bibles at the flea market, they're very excited to get them. And so people would just come over and they say, yeah, I read the Bible every day. I want to bring this Bible back for my children. Can I have it? And sure, you know. And so we gave Bibles out. I think if you wanted to bless Chinle from here, we could contact the pastor and provide some funds for Bibles, because they've ordered a lot of Bibles, but they're quickly running out just because the people are so interested. And then the people who aren't really interested in the Bibles, the native people, were very excited about the peanut butter and granola. And so they would come up, and then they'd take some peanut butter and granola, and then they would take some literature as well. And yeah, I think it was a really good experience to go to the flea market there. This is the pastor's son and my son, just chilling at the flea market. There's the pastor again. This was our stand. There's the Navajo Bibles and the students. And then we went to cut wood for a lady who she's about, I think she was in her late 80s. Or maybe early 90s, and she herds sheep just around the canyons there, and that's her livelihood. And so, but one of the issues there, and it's a very real issue, is that people just die because there's no electricity at their house, or because they don't have any heat at their house, and so they'll just freeze to death in the winter. And so one of the very real services that the church provides there is to cut wood for the people in the area, the older people in the area. And so we went out and did some TCI, some good old TCI, and we were there with, here's Pastor Silva, and the kids were taking logs, giving them to him, and then we were stacking them up and carrying them a little ways and then stacking them up, and it was a good time. And then, yeah. So then we finished off the VBS, and for the last little portion of the trip, Mrs. Gonzalez and Mr. Gonzalez were supervising the kids. I came home with my kids because the entire mission trip was just a bit long for my family to stay sane. So now I'll call up Eva and Alicia. Okay, Eva and Alicia, and they'll tell you a little bit about the mission trip.
All right, so a little background about Chinle, Arizona. It's in Navajo. It's a Navajo nation in Arizona, and if you go there, you might experience a taste of a new world. Although it is in America, it is very uncommon, or not what I would be used to. So when we went there, the first thing I noticed, actually the first time I got out in public, I felt like I felt so many eyes on me, and our little group stood out so much in Chinle, Arizona with the Navajos. So one thing we were told when we first got there is that the name of Jesus is known just as the 1040 window is. So that would be very few that know the name of Jesus. And as Mr. Burkett mentioned, there are a lot of churches. A lot of Navajos like to church hop, just go between and see how they like it. But I think we were told that a lot of the times they went to church was for some of the mission work or the handouts that the churches provide. So it's really nice to see when they're intentional about looking for the gospel. And so one thing Mr. Burkett didn't tell you guys was that we went knocking door to door, handing out VBS pamphlets. It was actually closer to the evening, so we were in a rush. We were paired up, and we went knocking on doors, and we were taught to say Ya'ate, which is hello in Navajo. And then we were also taught to say, hello, I'm Eva Gitter from where I'm from. And then my parents are from where they're from, or my dad is from, and then my mom is from. And this obviously varied from person to person in our group. And it was a way that they traditionally greeted, or for a newcomer, and it really helped them feel comfortable around us. So when we knocked door to door, that's what we said. And then also what we were told not to do is stand directly in front of their doors, because some kind of superstition, something, but we're trying to like stand and knock on the side while like getting out of the way. And it was a different culture. I actually was knocking on the door, and some lady like opened the door. Some grandma, she's so sweet, but she's like, "What are you doing here? There's Navajos. You should go back inside somewhere." I'm like, "Oh, okay. We're about to pack up and leave. It's okay. Don't worry. But do you have any kids who wants to go to VBS?" And then we would mark down the addresses and write them on a piece of paper, and come back the next day to see if the kids who are interested in going to VBS would get in the van. And so or their parents could drive them. That was a possibility too. So one thing about the Navajos I found is that they were very friendly and welcoming, and they showed a lot of love, especially at the flea market, to us. And even though we stood out so much, it was a good taste in a different place and a good place to be, and I felt very welcomed. I felt like I was blessed by the people I was surrounded with, the little kids, as well as I hopefully blessed them.
So I don't know about you guys, but I get kind of tired at Vespers, especially when they go a little long. And I get tired and I start to fall asleep. And I was kind of feeling bad about it, and I was like, wow, I probably shouldn't be doing that. But then I'm up here and I see our very own Pastor Don and Dr. Nedley falling asleep while we're up here. So now I feel very comfortable doing this. Good morning, Pastor Don. All right. we heard two different perspectives. We heard the perspective of our staff from Mr. Burkett, and we heard of the people of the Navajo Nation from Eva. So I would like to talk about our perspective, the students' perspective. And just like I'm pretty sure if you guys were listening to the Belize people, they said our mission trips are mandatory. So we have to choose a mission trip. And looking through the options, you go through them, you go Kenya. And in Kenya, you get a layover in Dubai. Who doesn't want to go to Dubai? And then you go to Belize. Belize is very beautiful. They get to go to snorkeling. Then you go down a little further, and you get to Arizona. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely not going to Arizona. So I definitely put my name up with Kenya with all my other friends. Well, guess what? I didn't have my passport. Thank you, Mom. So my name went from being at the top with the Kenya people to being at the bottom with 7 very lonely students in Arizona. And the Monday before we were supposed to leave for mission trip, I was talking to Eva, and then we went from talking normally to quite literally crying for going to Arizona. Tears were coming out of our eyes, and we were like, I really don't want to go. Please don't make us go. And Mr. Paulsos came to us and he was like, what's wrong, you guys? And we were like, we don't want to go to Arizona. We thought we couldn't go outside because there were drug addicts around. We thought we had to stay inside the church and be suffocated. We were proven very, very wrong. And I just want to say that any mission trip you go to, there will truly be a blessing coming from it. You won't notice it at the time, but it really is such a big impact. Sorry, guys, Pastor Don's making me laugh. So, back to the mandatory mission trips. Wow. Mandatory means you have to. And a lot of students they're very opinionated about it being mandatory. Like, why do I have to go? I don't want to go. I really don't want to go. Man, I'd do anything not to go. I'd fake a sickness. I'd get myself sick just like I had done but got better the night before. But yeah. But you'll realize where I'm going with this at the end of my story. So back to the student's point of view, half of us didn't want to go to Arizona in particular. We had friends going to the other extravagant and brilliant mission trips, and the other had to go because they literally had no choice. But yeah, we were there. We had Mr. Burkett.
That's a blessing.
Oh, amen, yeah, a blessing. I'm just kidding. No, it was truly such a blessing to be able to work with Mr. Burkett, guys. The children in Arizona, as you heard, we were working with VBS. They were very rowdy, very hyper. One of them kicked our student, Jaime. I had to chase about 3 different students around the sanctuary, about 50 times each child. Eva had to deal with the little children, and I could see on her face the frustration because they did not want to do the work. Noah and Ethan were at the back trying to avoid interacting with the kids as much as possible. It was really, really funny. But I'd like to say that none of that compares to Mr. Burkett's 2 amazing children that me, Eva, and Cece got to ride with on our way to the church. We had both of them screaming in our ears, his new daughter, Aiko, drooling on Eva while kicking her, basically overpowering her. You wouldn't know who was the one taking care of who if you looked back. It was really just a interesting experience. But we got there safely, thankfully, and we were able to do God's work. We got there, we dealt with the children, and we didn't really think much of it. It was a VBS. We have VBSs all the time. All the kids here, the elementary, even the academy students, for all our wise elderly. But it was a blessing. And I remember, or I don't know if you guys know, but when you're a teacher or you're somebody at the front and you ask your crowd to pray, you say, may I have a volunteer to pray? And not a lot of times you don't get anyone that's willing to pray. This time, I was the one asking. I wasn't the one being asked. And it's very different. And when I was asking the kids, no one volunteered, as expected. But 2 days after, I decided I was going to volunteer. So I asked our loudest, most confident, determined kid to pray. And he hit me with, no, I'm not praying for you. I'm not going to pray for this. So I went up to him and I was like, why won't you pray? And these next words really hit me. I don't know how to. And growing up SDA, being SDA all my life, prayer was just something that was always engraved. Like, I would pray, or I would be forced to pray every morning, every night, before we eat, before we go to sleep, just all the time. So when this child comes up to me and says, I don't know how to pray, I didn't know what to do. Like, I stood there and I was like, oh. I thought for a second and said, well, let me teach you. Repeat after me. And I gave him the basic prayer, Dear Jesus, please be with us, and he repeated every word. After that experience, I just thought about it. I would just think, and I'm like, there are so many people out in the world that haven't gotten the opportunities we have. And we hear about this so much, but we never really take it to heart. Because there will be so many times where we'll have a pastor up here saying, don't take what you have for granted. And we think, oh yeah, I won't take what we have for granted, and yet take it for granted anyways. Whether it's shelter, because like Mr. Burkett said, we got to stay with the Nedleys the first night. We went from staying in a beautiful house to a small apartment that's water was literally just mud flowing from the showers. And there's so many things that we take for granted. And this mission trip has truly taught me to see that. And when you go to these mission trips, you don't think you'd have such a big impact as all the international ones. Like, I wouldn't think that we would have as big of an impact as the people who went to Kenya, for those of you who came. But we really did make an impact. We taught people how to pray. People came and got our Bibles before we sold out our granola and peanut butter. There are so many people here in the United States alone that still need to hear the word of God, that still haven't gotten the chance to pray. And we shouldn't take that for granted, because no matter how old you are, how young you are, you can still make the difference. And I would like to read a verse here. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58, it says, Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Thank you.
Does anybody want to hear a song from Belize?
Yes.
Is it mandatory? If you're ready. Now I'm in trouble. Just think of the songs we'll be singing of our experience in heaven. It's going to be exciting. Well, let's stand for our closing prayer. Father in heaven, we know that you prepare us for lessons that we learn in our service to you. And in the process of serving you, we see more of ourselves and more of our need of you. Thank you so much that we can be a blessing, and at the same time we are being refined. Please use us, continue to use us, Lord, in your service. Draw us closer to you this weekend and these Sabbath hours. Bless our sleep tonight as well. In Jesus' name, amen. Just want to remind you, 9:30 tomorrow morning, we're having Sabbath school here, and also our church service at 11. God bless.